Chief Durham. If you don't know by now, my name is Princess Blandon, very proud sister of Marcus David Lamar Peters. I come before you to express my dismay, my disgust, and my disappointment in the decision of one of your men, Michael Niyataki, to take the life of my brother, Marcus Peters, whom was clearly unarmed and in need of help. Furthermore, my disappointment continues with you, as instead of taking responsibility and stating that you all messed up and extending your sincere condolences to my family, you were insincere, judgmental, and prepared to defend your officer without releasing complete information to the public. You had the audacity to attempt to take one moment of distress in my brother's life, where he was clearly calling out for help, and attempt to let this moment define and override all of the positive things about him and all of his achievements. You made the following statement about the mental health training that Richmond police officers receive. I quote you as saying, "We get 40 hours and people expect us to get it right." Well, Chief Durham, yes, we absolutely do expect you all to get it right. When your officers have the power to take a person's life. As the Chief of Police, if 40 hours is not enough, then it is your responsibility to ensure that your officers know their limitations and are prepared to call upon others with better training and skills needed to address people experiencing a mental health crisis. Neither you nor your officers should be allowed to use the excuse that a lack of training to justify the decision to end someone's life. You attempted to paint my brother as a superhuman being who was able to withstand being hit by a vehicle, then tased with the full voltage intended to be delivered. You and I watched that video together in slow motion. You and I both know that Marcus was not hit by the vehicle, he was swiped by the vehicle.
Thank you,
okay?
thank you, thank you.
Did you forget that both you and James Lano admitted in the presence of my uncle and I that only one of the two electrodes penetrated Marcus's body?
Thank you.
Oh my God.
And then that's why it was not effective. So shame on you. Shame on you for not stating this to the public. However, you took pride in painting a negative and false image of my brother. So again, shame on you. If what you have done thus far is what you call being transparent, then the community and I will pass on what you have to offer, because there are still so many unanswered questions. Chief Durham, if you really want to be transparent, then my family and I, supporting organizations and the community, demand a meeting with you on our terms, at a time, place, and location of our choosing, because you still need to answer the following questions. What does Richmond Police Department know about what took place at the Jefferson Hotel? I mean, Marcus was able to safely drive from his teaching job in Essex, Virginia. Marcus was then able to safely drive from his home to the Jefferson Hotel. Marcus parked his car in the front of the hotel. He didn't ride up on the sidewalk, nor did he ride through the building. Marcus walked in the hotel and he waved at someone. And then the footage is very scattered with no timestamps and Marcus appearing and disappearing. What happened after Marcus arrived at the hotel? I mean, was there some nefarious action taken towards him there? Has RPD been investigating these questions? What investigation has Richmond Police Department done to learn why it took the staff at the Jefferson over 2 hours to call the police after Marcus left? And why was none of his emergency contacts called, as he was an employee there?
Crazy.
What has Richmond Police Department done to work with other jurisdictions to obtain relevant footage of Marcus driving from his teaching job to his home and from his home to the Jefferson Hotel? Chief Durham, you should know that acquiring and releasing this footage is extremely important in helping the community understand what took place, and the family would like answers as to what you have done to get this information. Chief Durham, why did you stop showing that body camera footage after a state trooper told Officer Niyataki to put his gun away and return to his vehicle? I mean, I'm sure that body camera is not smart enough to take the command of a state trooper, as we did not see that his hand come up to the camera to turn the camera off. These are all serious holes in the family and community's knowledge about what happened to Marcus, both before and after he was killed by Officer Niyataki. And until we get answers to these questions, from you and Richmond Police Department, we will never rate what you have done and said so far, Chief Durham, as being anything close to being transparent. Transparency means answering these questions. Transparency means that you acknowledge to the public that Marcus was not hit by a car, but rather swiped, and that only one of the two electrodes from Officer Niataki's taser penetrated Marcus, and so the full voltage was not delivered to his body. Transparency means being honest and not trying to portray Marcus as that superhuman being that was a deadly threat to the officer. Why not just admit that you do not have all of the answers to know why your officer took the action that he did?
Thank you.
I strongly believe that when pointing out that there's a problem, that it's equally as important to offer solutions. So here are our demands that we believe that will yield solutions moving forward. These demands also define what justice for Marcus looks like to us and how we need to go forward with reformation.
Justice!
Reformation of the Richmond Police Department and policing culture in general to ensure that no family ever has to go through this tragic suffering again.
Yes. Yes.
Chief Durham, you must release publicly the current Richmond Police Department's policy on training officers in crisis intervention and mental health stabilization, that 40-hour training that you referred to, as well as the specific details of that training. Richmond Police Department must then ask experts in crisis intervention to assess Richmond Police Department's crisis intervention policy and training practices. Chief Durham, you must also release the conclusion of that assessment to the family and public. Our second demand, the Richmond Police Department, together with members of my family, members of the community, limited elected officials, and law and policymakers must work together to make a Marcus alert to be implemented in the city of Richmond. When a community member is experiencing a mental health crisis, others in the community would know to use this alert to notify a crisis management team comprised of specialized mental health and crisis intervention responders. These responders will not be members of the police department or the law enforcement officer. The crisis management team's primary objective is to stabilize the situation in a non-lethal manner. This alert will also have the capability to advise law enforcement they are requested to be present on the scene on standby to assist a crisis management team in a possible mental health crisis and that the person is unarmed. Any responding law officer will employ, if necessary, non-lethal tools, such as a net gun, pepper spray, a baton, a taser, and hands-on tactics if a member of the crisis management team requests law enforcement assistance. Our goal with this demand is to develop a model that can be replicated across the country where it is no longer expected that police officers will be asked to do the job of trained mental health professionals. The community does not accept that police are the proper people to keep the community safe during a mental health crisis, including the person experiencing the crisis and those nearby. The team of community members and limited elected officials who worked on the Marcus alert will identify Richmond Police Department funds that can be allocated to fund the creation of this new non-law enforcement crisis management team of mental health first responders that will be housed outside of Richmond Police Department. The experts that assess the Richmond Police Department current policy will also recommend protocols for the Richmond Police Department when engaging with a crisis management team. Chief Durham, if you think the Richmond Police Department does not have the skills and training to get it right, when your officers respond to a mental health crisis, you must give your full cooperation and support in creating a system of non-law enforcement first responders who will have those skills and training.
That's right.
The officer that killed Marcus needs to be held accountable for his actions as well. Richmond Police Department must turn over its investigation to the Commonwealth Attorney with the recommendation that Officer Niataki be judged in a court of law regarding whether his decision to shoot my unarmed brother was or was not legally justified. This officer served as judge, jury, and executioner of my brother. We think he must be made to defend his actions in the court of law, an opportunity that he took away from my brother. Moreover, because Michael Niataki did not fulfill his duties to protect and serve the community, as the only one that he seemed to protect was himself, Chief Durham, you must recognize the failure of your officer and ensure that he does not continue as a member of the Richmond Police Department. Chief Durham, we are asking you to terminate that officer immediately. Chief Durham, since you now know what the family and the community believe real transparency looks like, you must make a sincere public apology to my family for the death of my brother without being insensitive, without being judgmental, without trying to defend your officer and justify his action before you have fully answered all the questions that remain regarding what happened that day my brother was killed. My brother, Marcus David Peters, was only 24 years old when Michael Niataki made the decision to end his life. So Chief Durham, we, the family and community, give you 24 days to publicly acknowledge and respond to our demand. Again, Marcus needed help, not death.
Oh, come on, y'all, give the family your hand.